Our story starts with the beginning of man. Now, as an intelligent species, we looked around the world and we wondered, why is the sky blue? What is that big yellow ball that rises and sets every single day? And for that matter, what are those white dots that are only there when the big yellow ball is not? Why does that lion want to kill us but not the birds? And what do we have these two free hands for? Now, it may not seem like it, but these are very big questions. For that matter, any question is a big question. Now, I really recommend you check out Michael Stevens or Vsauce's TED Talk on why we ask questions. But today I want to focus more on the implications our questions actually have had. Now, humans are the only known thing in the entire universe to have ever asked a question. It symbolizes a very deep desire we have, a yearning for knowledge. And that makes evolutionary sense. I mean, to have knowledge vastly increases your chances of survival. Which berries are safe to eat? Can I trust that animal not to eat me? Which tree would provide the best wood for a fire? Or which tree would provide the best wood for a spear? However, there were many questions that we couldn't answer. So we used the best tool we had at the time: language. Now, more modern forms of communication like language likely arose roughly 50,000 to 150,000 years ago with the dawn of modern Homo sapiens. And this is likely when humans first started telling stories. So we looked around the world and we didn't understand a lot. And with questions that we couldn't answer at the time, we established a set of stories within our little communities that created. So in our small little communities, we established a set of stories that would essentially. So in our small little communities, we established a set of stories that would seek to explain all the things we didn't know. So what is that big yellow ball in the sky? Well, to the Australian Aboriginals, the sun represented women and the moon represented men. But to the ancient Babylonians, the sun was a physical god, a deity in the sky. Another big question we had is, why did we seem so different to other animals? Well, most ancient belief systems gave this notion that humans had some philosophical and existential superiority in some way or another to all other life forms on Earth. Even religions today, such as the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Islam and Christianity, still have that notion where it says in their texts that God created us in his own image, essentially making us the closest living thing to God on Earth. Now, these sets of stories really strengthened our small little communities and actually allowed us to expand in population. And this was really important in the human evolutionary timeline. See, a lot of experts believe that it was actually humans' ability to share common belief which grew our communities and allowed us to outcompete the Neanderthals in Europe and the Middle East, who were much physically larger and stronger than us. But there's a catch. Although storytelling and curiosity allowed us to outcompete the Neanderthals, it was also very heavily used to outcompete other Homo sapiens. It was a classic case of human psychology that we see so much even to this day, which is we are afraid of the unknown, which makes us very defensive of our own beliefs. Now, when these early human communities met, we likely shared stories, but rather than working together to get a better understanding of the world, we kind of had more of a no, you're wrong, we're right attitude. And this really fed tribalistic human instincts that we carry to this day of fear and hatred of what we don't know and what disagrees with our own beliefs. We see it so much with religions of this day. I mean, it's not like religion has ever caused any conflict before. Ironically, it was this fear of the unknown which actually stemmed from the very curiosity that we all have. It was an evolutionary trait to protect us. You see, if we encountered an animal that we didn't have much knowledge of, it was better to be on the more cautious side and fear it rather than be openly friendly about it and it potentially being deadly. So our fear of the unknown actually made humans curious to survive, so we could know how deadly that animal was or we could know what lies deep inside of that scary cave, and this motivated us to expand our horizon of knowledge. However, at one point, this fear of the unknown flipped from being a fear of physical things to a fear of ideas, beliefs, and thoughts that contradicted ourselves. Now, I would just personally speculate that this flip began when human belief systems became more existentially based, when they started to answer questions of our very own existence and purpose on Earth. Because those answers are very dear to us, and it's quite reasonable why we would get so defensive about that. Now fast forward in time to roughly about 10,000 years ago, to the dawn of the earliest human civilizations. Common belief was a crucial element of control. Now when I talk about control, I'm not talking about oppressive control, but rather it was crucial as it created a social fabric which bonded people in an ever-growing population. You see, at no point in history had humans ever lived in such big communities, so common belief was very effective at keeping the peace. I should also point out that at this point, common belief would be better defined as religion. Now, as these civilizations grew, we had to establish more institutions and organizations rooted from the common belief that created the society in the first place. Now, the problem was, other civilizations had their own set of stories, which in turn created their own set of rules, their own culture, and their own structure to society. And of course, a disbelief in their set of stories easily led to distrust between two nations and potentially warfare, something we obviously still see to this day. Now, humans had spent tens of thousands of years trusting these stories and religions to explain the world around us. But a few thousand years ago, we had a revolution in thought. We began to explain things with logic, rationale, and mathematics. And from here came the invention of philosophy. Now, philosophy gave a much more detailed understanding of the universe. It put many ideas through logical scrutiny, helping deduct any irrational beliefs. And from philosophy gave rise to many fields we still have today, such as astronomy, mathematics, political philosophy, ethics, metaphysics, ontology, logic, biology, rhetoric, and aesthetics, and a lot more. And this greatly aided humans in their understanding of the universe. However, philosophy's tendency to explain things mostly just through logic was not perfect. You see, it seemed logical that everything in the sky rotated around Earth, so Earth must be the center of the universe. It also seemed logical that we are so different to all other animals that we must have some existential superiority over them. Aristotle's law of motion stated that all objects' natural state is to be in a state of rest unless a push is exerted on it. And although this could explain a lot of things at the time, it was far from being true. And this was philosophy's shortcoming, is that human logic is inherently flawed. We call these logical fallacies. They're essentially arguments that are obviously incorrect, but still seem to fit our standard process of logic. Now, there are hundreds of logical fallacies, but just a few. The gambler's fallacy. Now, this states that no previous random event can affect a future outcome. Now, what this means is if you flip a coin 9 times and every single time it lands on tails, humans have this tendency to believe that the 10th time there must be a greater chance for it to land on heads. I mean, after all, it has landed on tails 9 times in a row. But in actuality, it is just as likely to land on tails once more. Another logical fallacy is the non sequitur fallacy. This is when a conclusion does not follow the premises. Now, an example of this is lung cancer was around long before smoking, therefore smoking doesn't cause lung cancer. And finally, a classic example of a logical fallacy is called the faulty cause and effect, or sometimes referred to as correlation does not equal causation. Now, an example of this is that sunburnt people tend to eat more ice cream. Now, the logical fallacy could be that ice cream makes you sunburnt, or that being sunburnt makes you want to eat ice cream, when in actuality, the cause is neither. It is the sun and the heat that causes you to want to get ice cream and causes you to get sunburnt. The cause is something completely different to the correlation. Now look, I would love to keep talking about logical fallacies, but that would have to be another video for another day. But the point is that our logic is flawed, and this is why philosophy can't explain everything. So, in time, humans went on to the next best thing, science. Now, although science has technically been around for millennia, the scientific method didn't really become a thing until the 1400s, with scientists such as Nicholas Copernicus, Francis Bacon, and Galileo Galilei all contributing. Science was stemmed from philosophy, but it fixed philosophy's errors. You see, science wasn't built on what we thought to be true, but built on what we could prove to be true. Now, what this meant is it took our flawed logic and biases out of the equation and just used mathematics, experimentation, and observation to explain the universe around us. Now, the scientific method was so good that it consistently remains to be the best tool we have to explaining the universe around us, and seems like it will be that way for the foreseeable future. But, and there is a big but, is that people didn't trust science, and people still don't trust science. And it's for the same reasons that humans didn't trust other religions and other beliefs that contradicted what we wanted to be true. Galileo provided plenty of evidence to show that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, but we actually rotated around the sun. But this did not sit well with the Catholic Church. In 1615, the Roman Inquisition set an investigation into Galileo and concluded that, in quotation marks, the heliocentric model is foolish and absurd in philosophy, and formally heretical, since it explicitly contradicts in many places the senses of the Holy Scripture. So Galileo was soon placed under house arrest for the rest of his life because of this advancement in scientific research, which prevented him from making any further advancement into his field of study. Now, the church here was acting very primitive by buying into primal human instincts of xenophobia and the fear of the unknown, where they get very defensive when there is possible evidence that contradicts what they already believe in. It has been observed throughout all human history, our defensive and aggressive stance to when we are confronted with the truth that we do not want to hear. We see it today with climate change denial. Many people don't want the reality of climate change to be true, so it's a lot easier to live in a fantasy where it either doesn't exist or we are not the main cause of it happening. And this is so we don't have to face any confronting truth that will possibly alter our comfortable lifestyle at the moment. So what the hell is this video about? Well, I would say it's about the inherent struggle between two seemingly contradicting human instincts: curiosity and the fear of the unknown. Now, although humanity in the long run is more orientated to learning about the truth, we always have and continue to be complacent in our flawed beliefs, which keeps us in a very comfortable fantasy that we want to live in. So, to end on a very ironic quote from the Bible, John chapter 8 verse 32, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Maybe a better quote is actually from Gloria Steinman, and she says, "The truth will set you free, but first, it's going to piss you off." Thanks for watching.